This is one of the first here. Yes. This is one of the first free masterclasses I've done in a long time, actually. So I'm really excited to be doing this. Hello. Okay, so we are live in a few different places, but I am so excited. So I'm keeping my eye on the chat here in Zoom, and we're just gonna be hanging out. But I am so excited for this, and I first want to welcome you, of course. Welcome. I'm excited. This is it's almost kind of feels weird because I used to do free masterclasses a lot, like single standalone masterclasses all the time, and I typically do like multi-day events now when they're free. And this is actually one of the things that we'll talk about today. But really, what's been very exciting is being able to experience what's been working for me and my clients over the last few years, really 2 years, in being able to launch programs in a much more different of a way that isn't actually too different from what you might be seeing out there, but behind the scenes, it's actually very much different. So today, what we're going to be doing, it's going to be a little bit more off the cuff. It's going to be more of a casual conversation, I would say, but we're going to be diving into a lot of content. So my goal with this actually training, I'm just going to be completely transparent with you guys in that this masterclass that we're doing here, and you guys are, I love to see you all in the chat. So please, like, say hello if you're watching. But I want to make sure that I'm fully transparent in that this training I'm actually going to be including in my scalable launch program. Okay, so as a complete heads up, I am currently enrolling into my scalable launch accelerator program, which is the first time I'm running this program, and it's basically going to have me walk you through how to implement what I'm about to share with you during this training. Okay, so I haven't really seen anybody running launches in this way. And if they have, and obviously it's not clear because of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm really, really thrilled to be here with you guys. And really, what we're talking about is launching, right? And I've taught launching for quite a while. I've been a launch strategist, marketing strategist for several years now, and I've been behind the scenes of many launches, 5-figure launches, 6-figure launches. Some of my clients have had like as much as $800,000 launches. Like I've seen it all. And the one thing that typically happens behind the scenes is exhaustion. Is this collective like, oh, this is a lot. And I don't know if you can relate to this or if you have launched and it kind of felt like a lot, but I know in my business this was very prevalent in that I have launched a lot over the last 7 years. I've had my business since 2014 now. And in the beginning, I wasn't really doing full on launches. I actually didn't know what a launch was in the beginning. And as I started to learn how to get my programs out in front of more people and being able to really get more enrollments into various programs, I've sold all sorts of programs over the years. I've sold masterminds, group programs, courses. I've sold memberships. I've sold programs for $25,000. I've sold a program for $500. And in that time, I've been able to kind of see what seems to work better versus in other times. But still, it's actually been really interesting because through every launch, it feels exciting and it feels really fun for me to launch. I really enjoy the process of having a group of people come together and go through a process together. But then it is tiring and it can be really exhausting. And, when you realize that that is the best way to launch, like to get people into a program in a more of a structured way, and you're like, okay, I have to keep doing this. That's where it gets a little bit tiring. That's when it gets like, is this sustainable? Is this sustainable? Because it's not a lot of times, unless you're a machine. And if you're watching, whether you're live on a replay, and I'd love to hear either way, I'm curious to hear, first of all, what are you focusing on selling right now in your business? Are you selling courses? Are you selling group programs? Are you selling memberships? Are you selling one-on-one services? And how is the sale or the sales process for that program going? Right? If you're anyone like me, you probably have attempted launches in the past or not, depends, right? And I want to actually break down the typical launch process that we see people usually doing, which is kind of more usual. Okay, so I'm seeing courses, group coaching, some Evergreen still in the launch cycle. Yeah, so that's kind of typical. And I would say that the launch process that I like to go through, I would say, is most effective for scalable programs. So launching in general is really a one-to-many kind of process to get sales. Right. So it's not what you would be doing organically when you're posting on Instagram and you're getting into DM conversations, or you have people applying to, get into your one-on-one mentorship or coaching or whatever it is that you're selling. It is quite a bit different in that sense, in that you're no longer selling one-to-one, although there can be an element of that included. It's more about selling one-to-many. So being able to create more of a scalable manner of getting sales. And this is actually a wonderful way to scale your business. And it's me launching group programs and courses and kind of anything in between has been the thing that has allowed me to get into multiple six figures a year in my business. Now, with that said, the best way that I found to get those sales has been through launching, right? It is the easiest way to get started. It doesn't require as much tech, but it does require a lot of your energy and a lot of your time. So in the last several years, I've done a lot of launches, and the most typical type of launches that you might be seeing out there are more of the like 5-day challenge kind of style. It doesn't always have to be structured in this way where it's a 5-day free challenge, but in many ways, that's kind of the model that most people are following, and it's because it works, right? So you can call it whatever you want. It could be a challenge, it could be a masterclass, it could be a workshop, it could be a whatever. It doesn't really matter what the name of it is. And it doesn't have to be 5 days necessarily. There are people that do it in a 3-day process, some do it in a 7-day process. I have actually found in my business that 5 days is the sweet spot in general for moving somebody from being a cold person that doesn't know who you are and being able to have a process that you take them through so that they feel like they trust you, they feel like they have a relationship with you that they've built, and it just feels better so that by the time you invite them into your next step program, it feels a little bit more aligned for them to make a decision, whether it's a yes or a no. Let me know in the chat as well, whether you're here live or not, if you have launched before and how that experience was for you, and what in general, what is the how do you feel about launching in general? And I want to make sure I'm able to see my comments here. I don't even know where my comments window is. Okay, here we go. All right. So a little exhausting. Okay. Yes. That is usually what I see. So when doing free challenges, I've done a lot of free challenges and I love them. I actually really love this model. I love the structure for launching, and the way that it looks. The way that it looks is usually with a usual type of live launch that we see, right? And there's tons of people teaching live launches, so this isn't like a new thing necessarily that I'm sharing with you. But the usual process is a 5-day challenge. Of course, we can do a variety of different lengths. It doesn't have to be 5 days, but usually it's like some kind of a 5-day challenge where you do day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and you do an invitation either on day 4 and 5 or just day 5. It kind of depends on your strategy and how you're structuring it and what the process in general looks like for your specific launch. So this actually is very effective at moving people from someone who is very cold to potentially buying. And I've seen this in my own business. I've sold my courses for $1,000 and it typically converts at a pretty predictable rate of anywhere from 1 to maybe even 8%, depending on the content and what you're selling and how good it is and the messaging. There's a lot of pieces there that are going to affect the conversion of your launch. One of my clients that I was in my academy, actually, this program is no longer existing, but this is actually a really cool way to see this, because she was doing a 5-day challenge to move people into her, I think it's a $5,000 program, and she was getting people from just cold people. She was getting people from Facebook groups and some ads and moving them into a process that's kind of like a 5-day challenge model. The very first time she did this process, I believe her conversion rate was like 1%. Then she was like, okay, well, I need to increase this conversion, of course. So we actually reworked what needs to happen within the 5-day challenge. What does she need to say? How does she need to say it? Like, what is the flow of the sequence of what needs to happen? And this is actually the art of how to structure a launch and how to structure those days. So this is a hugely important piece of this. But we reorganized this. We did a coaching session where we reorganized what she needs to say, when she needs to say it. And then she ran the same challenge again, and she went from a 1% conversion to a 7% conversion rate, which is crazy. She made, like, I don't remember how much money she made. I think she made $20,000 or $30,000. And it's the same process, except reworked in the terms of the sequence, right? So the sequence of what you say, the messaging of it, it really does matter. That is exactly what's going to affect your conversion rate in total. Now, this is amazing, right? Because once you have the right message, once you have the right angle, you have the right positioning, once you have all those pieces in place and you know where they need to go, it's like, cool, this is awesome. Now, what happens in many situations, where you do your launch and it's like, it goes great. And then you're like, wow, this was really cool. What do I do next? Because you want to obviously continue making money in your business, of course. So what happens next? Well, there's two things that you could do. And this is what most people will end up doing. Option number one is you do another one on a different topic. Right? And this is what probably people do most of the time. Most coaches that I see out there have a very unsustainable model in the sense that they have to always be reinventing the wheel. And I made the same mistake in the beginning, honestly, the first 5 years of my business as well. And I see people doing this, and every person is different. So I'm not going to judge and say that's wrong or that's right. Every person is different. Now for me, and I'll tell you about this in a moment, I knew that wasn't going to fly long term. And the problem with this is that you come up with one really good one, you have an amazing launch, it crushes it, you get 5% conversion, let's say, it's like amazing. You're like, yes, I'm so excited. Now you have to get more people into this program, right? Whether especially if it's an evergreen type of program, you want to get more enrollments, you want to get more sales. So you're like, okay, what else can I say? What else can I talk about? What's the other topic for my training? So you try to reinvent the wheel, you come up with another topic, and that's the thing, right? So you have to always be thinking, always trying to be creating, always trying to be like, what else can I do? What else can I do? How else can I serve these people, right? And that's great if you're very creative and you have a lot of time, you have a lot of energy. And also it can sometimes be not so great. Most of the time it's actually, I would say, not the best thing I would recommend doing, with some exceptions, of course. So what is the other option that I see a lot of people doing in this scenario? And if you're just hopping on, by the way, say hello in the chat so I see you, especially on Zoom. So the other option, and I see people teaching this process as well, is do the same challenge again, live. Okay? So this is the other option, right? Doing it again. Hi, awesome. Doing it again, same thing, same process. Now that's a lot better. That's actually a lot closer. It's a lot closer to getting the result that you want because it becomes a little bit more repeatable, right? Repeatable is sustainable. It's easier. You don't have to think as hard, so that the energy that you do have can be spent on being creative, having more spaciousness, serving your clients. Like, you want to make sure that you're being mindful of the time and the energy you have, unless you have a big team, which most of us don't. So you do the same challenge. You're like, this challenge worked. Let me do it again. That's what I actually have recommended for a very long time. I would say, okay, do a quarterly challenge, same challenge. You could change it up every so often if you want to, but if one thing works, why not do it again? Why reinvent the wheel when you can just do the same thing again, right? Uh, so not reinventing. I have really bad handwriting and it doesn't even, I don't even know. I can't even read it. It's just, this is why you have to listen to what I say. Okay. Not reinventing the wheel. So you're like, okay, it's happening a little bit better. Now there's a problem with this in that you have to do the same thing live because it is a live free challenge, right? Or 5-day workshop, 5-day training, whatever. So most of the time, the way that these trainings are structured, and that's what works, is creating a live environment. You gather people sign up for an event, a multi-day event, a workshop, a masterclass, 5-day training. They're excited. You gather people, you have a captive audience, that's the word for it. And then you go live each day, live stream, to be clear. You do a live stream every day for 5 days, plus, actually, it's longer because then you keep going live usually. And that's a structure that most people teach. And you have people gather, people hang out. It's actually really exciting. Like, I'm not knocking this because it is a very effective process. It's very exciting. It really gets results and it is able to get you that 2 to 7 or even 8% conversion because of the live environment. When people are there live, the energy is just different. It's just different, right? With Evergreen, it's a lot harder to make that work. Usually the conversion drops significantly anytime that you put something on Evergreen, right? So live, it's like, you can feel it, right? Have you ever been a part of a live experience and you just felt like it was just like, it activated you. You just felt so much better being there and knowing that other people are there with you. And it just creates this like amazing, this amazing vibe. Who here has felt like this before when attending a training before? Just say me in the chat if that's you. So that's awesome. Now the problem that happens is that, well, what if you are tired? What if you don't feel like talking about the same thing every freaking quarter or every other month? What if you get sick? What if you want to go on vacation and you need to do a launch to make the cash? Or what if you just don't want to do it? What if you need to protect your energy? What then? And that's actually what happened to me. I was like, okay, I love doing launches. I tried to do the same launch over and over and over again. And I'm a creative, like multi-passionate person. And after a while, talking about the same damn thing every single time, it gets boring. Like it just gets boring. Like how many more times can I say the same exact thing, the same exact training again and again and again? Like, yes, it converts, but like it's killing me. I need to say something different, right? That's a problem. And also for me, after I'd done many launches, I ended up burning out and I physically was not able to show up live anymore. My body would like shut down basically because I was doing it so much. I was showing up so much. I was on so much. I was working like 80-hour weeks because I was doing it this way. And that's ongoing. And my body was just like, no more. You can't do this. I would get headaches pretty much instantly. My face would get red. My face would get hot. I would start like getting hot. It was just, I would feel the physical symptoms of stress and burnout. And I couldn't go live anymore. I still tried because I didn't know of another way. So I still did it. I just did it less frequently. But I knew that every time I did, it was like I was doing something against what my body wanted me to do. Who here has felt like this before? And you maybe haven't done it enough. But I knew that when I began forcing myself to launch, even though it's still performed, I can perform well. I knew that I'm like, it's just not sustainable. I just can't keep doing it this way. I just can't. This is not something that I'm like, I started to fall out of love with my business because it was hurting me. Right? And I love being live. I love hanging out with people on live, but when my body is screaming at me to stop, something's off, right? So I want you to remember that as we keep going. Now, there's another challenge that happens with this. And as you grow your business, obviously doing a launch is great, and you also need to have people go through your launch. You have to have people there, right? In order to make that launch happen. So what typically happens in these scenarios? So most people are just focusing on organic growth, right? Most people will grow their email list, they will grow their Instagram, and they will do a launch and promote it to their audience and then run that launch to that audience, right? Which is something that I recommend. If any of you are in my Serve to Sell program, that is what I recommend starting with. I would say up until you get your first 10 clients, focus on organic only. It is way easier for you to refine your messaging, your positioning, all of that stuff. And I do think it's better to do it in an organic manner. Now, when you're ready to scale and you're wanting to get into multiple six figures, it can be a little bit challenging to create repeatability if you're talking to the same audience the same all the time, right? So if you if you were, for example, doing the same challenge over and over, you're like, I'm going to be repeatable. I'm going to make my business be more sustainable, more repeatable. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel so I can be smarter about the work I'm doing. Let me do the same thing. But then you're only promoting it to your organic audience. And guess what? Your audience is going to get sick and tired of you talking about the same freaking thing every single month, right? So it's going to lose its natural urgency. It's going to lose its natural allure. And while you can do it, consistently, it just gets kind of boring. It gets kind of boring for you. It gets boring for them. And these people would potentially buy your programs and would want to engage with you, if not for you just selling the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, right? So organic, if you're doing the same challenge live again, you can focus on just getting people from your email list or your community and having them sign up for that. Hopefully you guys can see my screen here. But the problem is that because they might get a little bit tired, you're not going to be able to do this process as frequently, right? So you're going to typically be kept to doing it once a quarter, probably. Once a quarter or less, right? Hopefully you can see this. I know it's a little bit bright. Well, just listen to what I'm saying. Once a quarter, I would say organic is typically what happens. Now, if you're like, okay, so what else could I do? Well, a way to keep it fresh is to do number one, right? Do another challenge or another launch, another series on a different topic. That's why most people do this process. Organic, right? And they can launch as many times as they want to. They can do a launch once a month on a different topic, enrolling people into a different program or the same program. And because the message changes up, their audience continues to grow, the audience is still engaged, the audience is excited, and it just keeps everything a lot more fresh. But then again, there's a problem of like, it's not predictable, it's not repeatable, and you can burn yourself out in the process. So what else do you do? Okay. So if you're doing the same challenge again, you can start doing ads. And I'm a huge fan of ads. If you follow me on Instagram, if you follow me for any length of time, you know that I'm a huge fan of paid advertising. I love using organic and I love using paid advertising. And there was actually a 2 to 3, maybe even 4 year period where I didn't do any organic marketing, very little. I barely showed up on Instagram. This is actually my third Instagram account now. I barely showed up on Instagram. I had a Facebook group, but I didn't really do much with it. I'm not a big Facebook group person, to be honest. I have one, and it's just I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me to have an ongoing Facebook group. And I was mostly getting people from my audience, and I was running ads. So you can start running ads as another alternative to those launches. Now, when you start incorporating paid advertising, all of a sudden, the world opens up a little bit more. And I'm going to break it down for you in a bit. But when you start running ads, it's like, okay, if you only have 100 people in your audience, it doesn't matter because you can pay to get your message out in front of thousands and thousands of people. So even though you started with 100 people or just 1,000 people, you can double that by just paying a little bit of money to Facebook or Instagram or both. I mean, it's the same company. Okay. So when this happens, you all of a sudden can do it once a month or once every other month. And the message doesn't become as boring because you don't have to always promote it to your own audience. You can have it where every so often, once a quarter, you promote it to your audience. The other launches you do are shared with somebody else and you're able to get the message out that way. But then there's still the problem of like, Kamila, are you telling me I have to go live every single month and do it for 10 days, 5 days plus ongoing on the same topic? Who's got the time for that? Who wants to do that? Some people do. I don't. So I'm gonna take this off here. So as I was trying to do these launches and I was trying to do them live and I was trying to run ads and I was like, let's just do the same thing every other month. And I started burning out and I was just like, I can't, I just have to find a better way. I was like, all right, there has to be a better way for me to enroll people into my programs. So I actually decided to, even though I was still launching, I wanted to find another way to bring clients into my programs, right? And the other typical way that people try to go after or, get exposure to their program and enroll people into their program is by attempting to do Evergreen, right? So you probably have seen a lot of ads out there from people who say, you don't have to launch, you can just do Evergreen and yay, and that's what you're doing. And especially for like high ticket. And I've seen that a lot. And I want to be very honest and share my experience with this. And I also want to be transparent in that I do use Evergreen methods in my business now. And my Evergreen methods are effective now. But I'm going to tell you how long it took for me to get an Evergreen system working in my business and how many failed attempts I've tried to have, or I actually had in my experience, until I got one working. I'm going to tell you, I probably spent close to $100,000 in trying to make Evergreen work. On running ads, on trying different strategies, on trying all the things that should work and didn't work, on all the things that people were saying worked and they were just like, it just wasn't working. And I say this because everyone wants this like easiest thing possible where I just don't have to do anything and it's magically going to work for me. And that can happen to an extent. Obviously, it's not going to magically work, but Evergreen can work. But unless you already are making, I would say, multiple six figures in your business and you've done the launches, like you have experience with your message and you have another way that you've mastered to get sales in the process, so you don't have to rely on Evergreen working because it usually doesn't work right away, then yeah, go for it. You can go and experiment with doing Evergreen stuff, okay? But if you haven't found a way to reliably bring, sales into your programs, I honestly don't recommend moving into Evergreen as your number one thing. Let's just do Evergreen right off the bat because it's probably going to take you several months to make it work. At least that's been my experience. And I've tried a lot of different structures and strategies, like a lot, okay? And they all work for some people, but being able to identify the messaging for what works and why it works. Most people try to like come up with that out of thin air, and that only really happens in live environments. So this is why I come back to launching, right? So I launched my course 4 times before going Evergreen, and after a year and a half of being Evergreen, my conversions are going way down. And that's what happens, right? And I see this with my Evergreen funnel as well. It's not purely ever passive. Like it's not there. Passive income doesn't exist unless you have like real estate, I think, or you have like dividends that you're getting from your retirement or something like that. That is truly passive. And everything else, like you do have to work at it. And even with my funnel that I have, my conversions are also down after a while. Like it's been working and it's down. And so there's still work that needs to happen. But the best way to generate an influx of sales has been through launching. That's just been what's that honestly is just period. Now, because I burnt out and because I was like, and the whole reason why I was trying to do all this Evergreen stuff is because I didn't want to do launching in this way anymore, right? I was just like, I was so tired. I was so exhausted. I couldn't do it. So I needed to find a better way. I knew that launching works, right? Launching in the way that I've done it, it has worked for me. Anytime I would have a client do it, most of the time it would work too, right? And that's awesome. But what I did not like is having to be on this much. I just didn't want to run my business in this way. I really And there's nothing wrong with you if you want to do that. Like there's many people out there who, they're live all the time. They are on all the time. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. If you vibe with that, like that's great. And I know for my mental health and for my body, I just can't. I just can't do it, right? Who, by the way, is there anyone that relates to that? Like being able to have the spaciousness, having the freedom, and not necessarily having to be on all the time. Just let me know. Just say me in the chat if you're here. Because I really want to see who else resonates with this. I knew that I didn't want my business to be my whole identity, and that's what it was before. Because I constantly had to think about my business. I constantly had to think about the next launch. I constantly had to think about the next thing, right? And it was a lot. And I ended up having zero hobbies, zero time for relationships, zero time for friendships, zero time for myself. And that's exactly what caused me to burn out. And I knew that as I was healing from burnout, and it took 2+ years to heal from burnout, by the way, I needed to find a better way to do it. So I always ask myself, how can I make this easier? How can I make this more repeatable? What can I do? How can I make this actually work? So I started to think about what are the scalable things and what are the unscalable things when it comes to launching. Now, I'm not going to be the one that tells you to do everything in an automated, just scalable way, because to be totally honest, as we talked about with Evergreen, the conversions do drop when it's Evergreen, right? When it's purely automated, the conversions are not quite there. So having a purely scalable Evergreen model, it's not necessarily sustainable in the sense either, because the energy is just not there. So we like to have the energy. But I wanted to divide it up and just look at it. It's supposed to say scalable and unscalable. So what do we typically see with launches, with launch events? What typically happens in this scenario? So when we do an unscalable launch, right, and I'm just going to share a few things, usually this is going to be reliant on having calls, one-on-one calls, for example, sales calls, right? And this is especially true if you're selling a high ticket program. And when I say a high ticket program, I would say that's anything above $2,000, maybe $3,000. It really depends on your industry. In some niches, it might be 1,000, right? It kind of depends. But having one-on-one calls obviously is very unscalable. You can't, unless you have a team that does it, but not all of us are able to hire additional team members to take care of this, right? So one-on-one calls, doing live streams as a part of your launches, live streams every single day. Usually that's over a course of 10 days, because you do 5 days of training, and then after that you do another 5 days for nurturing and case studies and answering questions. That's the usual launch process, right? That's also unscalable. Any Q&A calls that maybe you'll be doing in your launch, that's also unscalable. You have to do it physically. Any kind of DMs you have to do, that's also unscalable. Having a Facebook group that you have to monitor is also unscalable, right? So what is scalable? What is easier? What is another way that you can enroll clients or have the experience happen in a little bit more of an automated manner? And also actually promotion, I'll say promo. And this is specifically organic, okay? Organic promotion. So what is the more scalable approach? What else could you be doing? I just want to take a look here. What else could you be doing in a more scalable manner to what in the process of launching? Well, you can have a sales page to take care of your sale, right? You can have a checkout page, checkout form. You can have videos that are potentially pre-recorded and not live streamed. And that's pretty much it. As a part of emails, emails should be done, and that is potentially scalable. And doing ads, of course, is a lot more scalable. And by the way, when I say scalable, it doesn't mean you don't do anything, right? You still have to do it, but it does allow you to make more without working as hard. It's working smarter versus harder. This is working harder versus working smarter in some senses. Now, there will be circumstances where it doesn't make sense to all the scalable things. It really is going to be dependent on you. It's going to be dependent on your business, your ideal client, what offer you're selling, who your ideal client is. Like, all of that matters. So I'm really sharing kind of a very, very high level view here. But I also started to identify for the launches that I was doing, What could I start doing in a way that would make my life easier? And one of those things that I identified is that when I do launches, I am able to see that it feels better for me energetically to launch without having to do sales calls. I did not like having to do sales calls. I enjoy sales calls. I'm good at sales calls. I teach sales skills in my programs. And I also knew that with my new energetic vibe and what I desired is to do less sales calls. So I actually wanted to keep this at a minimum in my business. Keep my one-on-one calls at a minimum during my launches. That usually meant that most of my launches, especially the scalable launch model that I'm about to share with you, I wanted to use that primarily for programs that would not require a sales call, right? And again, there might be still circumstances where I might do decision calls, help people make a decision, and there will be times where I do it even for lower ticket offers. But I wanted to make it as easy for people to purchase and join my program without having to talk to me. Okay? So this to me meant that my program had to be under the high ticket realm, which means typically in the $500 to $2,000 range. Typically in that range of price, you don't usually have to do calls, right? So because I didn't want to do calls, I was like, okay. Now I'm saying all this because I've done many launches which were $5,000. I've done launches that were for $25,000 programs. Those all require calls. And I'm not against calls. It's just a more repeatable, ongoing process. That was the vision that I had. You can change it. I have clients who are in the accelerator actually, and their programs, the vision for their programs is to enroll into a $5,000 program. So there might be, there will have to be an element potentially of one-on-one calls. Not maybe always, not in the future, but especially if you're selling to a colder audience, there will probably be a thing. So for me, my sweet spot specifically, usually for my programs, has been between $1,000 to $1,500. That has been the sweet spot where no one has to talk to me. No one needs to talk to me to make a sale. It's been really easy. So that's good. There might be some DMs that happen, but they're not required. So this is the other thing, right? If you're selling a high ticket thing and you don't want to do one-on-one calls, you might need to do at least DMs. You're going to have to do DMs. You're going to have conversations in DMs. You're going to have a conversation with somebody at some point. Unless you have a very large or very engaged organic audience, people from ads are not going to convert at a high percentage without talking to somebody at a high ticket rate. It's just rare that it will happen. Okay. I'm giving you guys like what my experience has been with me and many clients. Okay. So DMs I think are actually really valuable. Even if you're selling something for this mid-ticket price, I still think that's a really great thing that is worth, even though it's unscalable, it's still worth it. So this is something that we'll talk about in the accelerator and how to incorporate in a way that doesn't burn you out. Another thing that I really have liked is doing the Facebook group. I actually find that because we talked about the live energy, the live environment is so important. And it's so important to have a live environment because everybody feels like they're in it together. It allows the vibe to rise. It allows people to feel like there's just this energy that's natural. There's natural urgency involved. There's a natural end to when the cart closes. Everything it just aligns, right? So being able to have a pop-up Facebook group, specifically a pop-up group, so you don't have to have a Facebook group for like all your stuff. As long as you have a pop-up group that's created for your launch, that's usually enough. And there's other ways to do this. I have done some launches. One of my clients, she teaches photographers, and a lot of her people are not on Facebook. So there are other ways to run a launch. It doesn't necessarily require a Facebook group, but I do find that having a Facebook group is really, really valuable. So I'll be sharing other ways to do this in the accelerator as well. Now the other thing, so I was like, the other thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to do a live stream every day. That was like the biggest thing. I'm like, I don't want to teach the same thing every month on live. I just don't want to do it. I've done it before and I don't want to. I just don't. Okay. So instead I could potentially do some Q&A calls. I'm really good coaching. I love answering questions. As long as I don't have to do it every day for 5-10 days, I'm fine with it, right? And I do find that organic promotion is good as long as it's done um, when their energy is good. Anytime that you feel like you have to promote something, the energy is not going to be there to get you the enrollment that you need, because you're going to be pushing, you're going to be forcing, you're going to be really coming from a place that isn't an abundant place of like, I'm excited to share this. I want to share this. It's not going to be supportive in you getting hundreds of people signing up for any kind of event, right? So even organic promotion is something I utilize now a lot more. There were 2 years within my business that I did very, very, very little organic. The only organic I did is my email list. I did not post on social media that much. And it's because I was just like, I can't think of creative things to say. I just couldn't do it. The energy wasn't there. So I relied on ads way more. And it also helped me grow my audience much more as well. I'm sure many of you guys probably have found me from an ad. And I love that, because then you get to come and join my community and then we get to hang out, right? So with this, these are the things that I wanted to stick with. And I wanted to incorporate all of these when changing and shifting the process that I was going to start doing when it comes to my launches. So let's get rid of this. Okay, so what I wanted to do is, I haven't ever shared this, so this is like almost a little uncomfortable for me. I've only done this with private clients so far, so bear with me, guys. What I wanted to do is a rinse and repeat launch process. Now, this didn't start out as a rinse and repeat launch process. I didn't like come into it being like, I'm going to do a rinse and repeat process and I'm going to do the same thing every single time. Yay. I'm so smart. Like, it's not what I did. I was just like, it happened out of necessity and out of wanting to make things freaking easier for myself already. So I decided to change one thing. Instead of doing live trainings, I decided to pre-record my trainings. And I wanted to stream them as if they were live, but I called them broadcasts. So instead of live, we're going to be live together, live streams. I call them live broadcasts. Okay? And I would work on pre-recording a training, pre-recording all the content for the challenge or the training or the course or the whatever it was, the free piece of the free event, the multi-day event. I would pre-record it. I would actually have the slides. So instead of my face, and you don't have to do it this way. My clients have also done it with just their face. I would do it slides with my face in the little corner. And sometimes moving to my face as well. And there's a very specific way to structure. So obviously there's a specific way, the sequence of what to say, when to say it, and how to structure it. There's also the way to run and record these lessons so that they engage people. They have the live energy. So even though they're broadcast, people can still feel like this is exciting. This is like, there's the energy still. There's still the energy, right? So there's a way to do this that we're not going to get into. That's something I teach in the accelerator. But there's a way to do this that still creates that live vibe. So I wanted to record this, right? So I recorded these, and using some tech tools that we're not talking about today, I was able to set it up so that instead of going live physically, my trainings would be live instead. And you can do this through Zoom, and you can do this through Facebook, directly streaming live. And that's what I usually opted for. I usually would have these trainings live streamed into the Facebook group on a specific day, every single day. They were pre-recorded, and I did that. And because I wanted to still have an element of coaching and support, I did include a few Q&A calls in there, but those are not required. So those I did do live because I wanted to be there physically with people and answer questions. And obviously you can't really pre-record that. So I did that. But here's an amazing thing that happened. All I had to do during a launch is I had to show up in the Facebook group, the pop-up Facebook group. I had to answer some questions. One of my launches, I actually hired someone to answer the questions and like engage with people, because it was a lot when you have like 1,000 people in a Facebook group that are all here and they're all excited, right? They're all answering your questions, they're engaging. It can be a lot, right? So that is something that's very unscalable, but it's something that is easy to outsource, right? So I actually had, for several of my launches, I have hired community managers to answer questions, to cheer people on, just because I have to protect my energy so that I can show up in the best possible way. And that's one of those ways that I don't, that's so funny. So this is a thing, Tammy says, I went to one of these thinking it was live, was upset. No one was really answering my questions. So this is again about like setting expectations and making it clear so people are not like, why are you not answering my questions? There's a way to do that so no one's like upset or confused about why no one's answering, right? This is all going to happen in just the structure and the expectation setting, okay? So I did that, and surprisingly, I was selling a $1,000 course, and I was able to have, I think it was like a 3%, 2.8% conversion. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't have to show up, and it had the same result as when I did it live. Interesting. So I did originally that first launch I did, and I got organic promotion for it. I promoted it to my email list. I promoted it on social media a little bit, and I ran some ads as I always do. And I got some people in, and I was like, okay, it converted. I got some money. That was pretty cool. So instead of being like, let me try something else, I was like, no, why don't I do the same thing? And why wait? Why don't I just do it next month? Because that was so easy. All I had to do was just show up for one Q&A call and hang out in the Facebook group. That's pretty cool. Let me do it again next month and see what happens. So I did it again next month. This time, I didn't promote it to my entire audience because, again, what I talked about before, it'd be really boring and annoying to talk to your entire audience about, hey, I'm doing a launch, I'm doing a challenge, oh, come join, it's closing. And then a few weeks later, you're like, oh, come, and it's closing. It's like, clearly it's not closing, you're doing it all the time, right? It doesn't make any sense. So at this point, I did not promote it to my entire audience. I only ran ads. And this is actually the format that I did. And I did this many, many times. I did this several times, same exact launch. I probably did this exact same launch maybe 6 or 7 times. And every time it converted at about 2%. Predictable, repeatable, right? Cold audience. So the way that I decided to do it is I would do the first launch, I would do organic and ads. And actually, before we talk about this, there's something else I need to say that I forgot to mention. Before I started doing this process and before I burnt out, my goal was always to do a 6-figure launch. I always wanted to do a 6-figure launch, $100,000 minimum from a launch, right? And I've had many clients who have had that result. One of my clients, Amber, she did $100,000 in a single day. Another client did $150,000 in 5 days, and she's in the career niche. The previous client was a business psychic and medium. I had another client who did, I think it was $230,000, and she's a nutritionist. Like, there's 6-figure launches to be had, right? Now, those 6-figure launches usually happen in a live environment, and I have had 6-figure launches in my business as well. I've had several 6-figure launches before I burnt out, right? Now, there's a really interesting thing about 6-figure launches. And I'm going to say something that most people will probably not say, okay? I'm probably going to say something a little bit different. I don't think your goal should be to have a 6-figure launch. Unless you have a large ad budget or a large audience where it feels like 6 figures is actually not a lot, I would not have a goal of making and having a 6-figure launch. The only way I would recommend having a goal of this is a 6-figure launch, dang it, is when it feels like that's easy. If it feels like, oh, this is going to be a stretch, this is going to be hard, this is going to be big, that's not the energy that I want. And here's why it's not the energy I want. The energy of this has to be a 6-figure launch creates pressure. It creates attachment to the outcome. It creates expectations. It creates anxiety. And it basically has you feel, I'm going to change this up a little bit so you guys can see better. What it basically does is it has you put so much pressure to perform, so much pressure to make this thing work, that you, in the process, abandon everything about yourself, like yourself. You don't really care for yourself as much because you have to hustle to make this 6 figures happen in 12 days or however long it is, right? You put a lot of pressure on yourself. You do stretch yourself in ways that you wouldn't otherwise, not necessarily in a good way. You put all these expectations on yourself that if you hit it, you're good. If you don't hit it, you're bad. That if you don't hit it, you're not worthy, that something's wrong with you, right? So the whole vibe, and again, I've had 6-figure launches, so I'm not speaking like, oh, Kamila's never done it, so that's why she's saying that. I've had it. And I will probably have them in the future as well. But those are actually not my goal anymore, because I've shifted my mindset, wrong pen, I've shifted my mindset from I need to have 6 figures within this small period of time, and I'm going to put all this pressure on myself to perform and do and like hardcore hustle, grind, and making it work. Plus, I'm going to spend all this money on ads that in a way that may or may not work. Who knows if this is going to work? It's my first launch. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to spend 10 grand. And I run ads for clients. I have clients that come to me and they're like, I made up a launch. I'm going to do this launch, right? The way that we talked about before. New launch, new idea. I have 10 grand to spend on ads. Hopefully this works. Okay, hopefully it works. Yeah, hopefully, right? Imagine having $10,000 and you're like, I am betting on myself. I'm gonna make sure this works. But like, how can you know it's going to work? How can you make sure that your launch is gonna perform? Oh, because my other launches work. Okay, is it the same launch? No. So how is this not gambling? How is it you're guessing? How is this not, it's like gambling. The odds are in your favor. Maybe it's not exactly like Vegas gambling. Because yeah, you're betting on yourself, but how much pressure are you putting on yourself? How exhausting is that? How can you not feel exhausted? How can you not feel burnt out after that? Where you're like, I need to make the money back. And then let's say sales are not coming in. Maybe your messaging was off. Maybe you were like, oh, your energy was, maybe you were coming down with something. Maybe you were kind of getting sick halfway through and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can, what's going to happen? You just spent 10 grand on ads, on a campaign, on a launch that you don't know if it's going to work. You don't even know if people care about this offer. You're literally just guessing. And that is what most people do. That is what most coaches do. And I'm telling you, 7-figure coaches do this. I know because I've been behind the scenes of a lot of these launches where they're like, this sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. Let's spend all my money on it. Now I'm a Capricorn. Maybe this is my Capricorn in me, but I like to be cautiously optimistic. And the risks I take are calculated. There are, of course, times where I bet on myself. And the times that I bet on myself where it doesn't make sense usually isn't in the ad area. It's in mentorship. It's in program I'm gonna sign up for. Doesn't make any sense financially. Feels like a stretch. Feels difficult, but I'm gonna do it because I'm gonna learn. I'm going to embody the person I need to be in order to make it happen. That's different. That's taking a leap. That's betting on yourself because you're developing yourself. You're stepping into who you need to be. Now, it's completely different to me when it comes to investing in ads. When it doesn't work, like, yeah, you can show up the best possible way, but like at what cost? And I've been behind the scenes where people spend money and they make nothing back. And why does that happen? Because you're guessing. So my approach is I actually want, instead of doing a 6-figure launch, and again, I probably will have 6-figure launches in the future. That's not my goal right now. My goal is to have 6 figures for sure. 6-figure programs for sure. So instead of a 6-figure launch, my goal is to have a 6-figure program. Not just maybe, for sure. Guaranteed. How do I create a guaranteed result that my program will be a 6-figure program. It happens in repeatability. It happens in stacking results over time, compounding results over time, and moving forward when it's working and moving forward. Is this landing for you guys? Do you see the difference? So that's my goal. My goal is this could, and not every program I run is going to be a 6-figure program. Really depends on how I feel about it. But my signature big core programs, like Surf to Sell is a 6-figure program, my Online Profits Academy was a multiple 6-figure program, big programs, I see it as like, it's a process. It's repeatability. I'd rather get there for sure than try to get there on the first try and burn myself out in the process where I don't have the energy to deliver. So with this in mind, I take it in steps. I take it in stages. I'm more cautious. I see a lot of people who teach launching that either talk about it from a perspective of theory, or they've never done it for themselves before. And it's like, that sounds good. Not reality. Or they have a massive audience. They don't need to run ads. And they're like, whatever. I have 100,000 people on my email list. I have 50,000 people on my Facebook group. Of course, if you have a massive audience organically, then hell yeah, you can do whatever you want, right? Or you have a huge budget for ads. Of course, why does it matter? $10,000, it's nothing. Doesn't matter, right? Of course. But what about everyone else? What about people like you and I that maybe, I don't know, don't want to waste money? Maybe want to be a little bit smarter with the money? Want to be cautiously optimistic with the investments that they make? Maybe you want to spend less money on the ads and the processes so that you have more time, more money left over to hire that high ticket coach you want to hire instead, right? So I see it in stages. This is the process that I usually go when I use a scalable launch model. The first time I run the launch is a test. It's an experiment. So what you're going to be doing, for those of you that are already in the Scalable Launch Accelerator or in the self-study version, when you are planning out your scalable launch, the first time you launch it is an experiment, okay? And for those of you guys who are not in the program yet, I'll talk about that at the end to see if you're interested. We're starting on Monday. The first time is a test. The first time is an experiment, okay? So I want to get organic leads. I want to engage my community. I want to engage my email list, my Instagram, my Facebook group, whatever possible source I have available to me, I will promote my event to those people to get organic leads. Now, I also want to be running ads because if you only do it to organic and then you do it to ads, organic audience, people who are warm, they already know you, they already like you, they're going to behave differently than people who don't know you. People who don't know you are a little bit harder to convert. So your launch, when you're doing it, for it to be repeatable, has to work for both, not just organic. It's easy to convert people who already love you and already trust you, have already given you money to do it again. It's not hard. It's much harder to have somebody take out their wallet for you for the very first time when they just got to know you a few days before. That's the harder part. Okay? This is where the science is really important and the art is really important. So the first time I do it, I do organic and I do ads. Here's how I usually budget for this, okay? I'm going to tell you everything right now. I usually go off of, there's something that we like to do if I created a brand new program and I'm going to be doing a launch, something that I like to do is a secret enrollment process in the beginning. Those of you guys who are already in the accelerator, if you joined in time, that bonus is already available. So I usually will get 3 to 5 sales into the program before the program is even open. Okay, so even before the program is opened up and it's available for people to join, I usually enroll some clients behind the scenes into the program. And the goal of enrollment behind the scenes, and this is not something that people will always be able to do, especially if you have a very small audience or no audience at all, you can still launch, you can still do this whole process. It's just going to be ads only at that point. But if you have even somewhat of an audience, I love to do a secret enrollment process to get me my first 1, 3 to 5 clients. I'm not going to get into that. That's something I teach in the program. It's one of the bonuses included. But at that point, in the ideal situation, actually, one of my clients just went through this process. So she just pivoted. She just went from, she's a photographer. She's like, now I want to help photographers grow their businesses. Brand new niche, started with no audience whatsoever, no Instagram. I had her create a new Instagram. She started growing that Instagram within like a month or two. She had 300 people following her on that Instagram. And I had her start connecting with people doing the secret enrollment process. She enrolled 3 clients through the secret enrollment process. Her program was $1,000. So now she had $3,000 that she had already made from the secret enrollment. Now she had $3,000 that she could play with and run ads with. Now that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you're not going to do, most of the time I no longer do secret enrollments. That's something I did before, just because I really just have the money for the ads purely now. But she had $3,000 that we could spend all of that into ads. But that's not what I usually do. My cautious approach is to spend between $1,000 to $2,000 on ads, depending on your, comfort level. Now, in some exceptions, you may be able to spend less. It really depends on your niche. It really depends on your industry. So my industry of, yes, I will send a replay. It will be very limited though. So in my industry, I coach entrepreneurs, I coach coaches. So it's a pretty competitive market. A lot of people really struggle with getting good cost per lead. I've been able to get my clients and myself very good cost per lead, but that's not the average, what people typically see. Most people struggle. Now with this said, for me, $1,000 to $2,000 is a pretty good test, I would say. And I'll tell you why in a few moments. In some cases, some people who have a more niched market, they'll be able to spend less and get a lot of people, and they don't have to spend as much money. So again, this is where we have to look at it specifically for you and decide what that looks like for you. So with this said, if I have, let's see what I have here. Okay. So if I'm doing my first test, and let's say that I have $1,000, and I'm just going to use, so here's one more thing I want to just preface all of this by saying, I just want to clarify in that, in this example, I'm going to be sharing a program that you're selling for $1,000. If you're selling a program for $1,500, the numbers are going to be a little bit different. And you usually will have a few different levels when you're selling programs. There might be a VIP level, there might be a regular level. So there's always more, there's usually more money that you can make. But for the purposes of this, we're going to be using $1,000 as your sale offer, okay? So the first one, let's say that I have a $1,000 budget, okay? So let's say that through ads, I'm able to get 200 people at $5 a lead. Let's say that I'm $5 CPL. CPL is cost per lead. Okay, that's usually what I see happening for challenges in my niche. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower. Some people end up making, sometimes it's $10 a lead, but I would say on average for me, it's been around $5. So let's say I get 200 people with this $1,000 budget, and then through, I guess I should switch it because it's organic ads. Ugh. Okay, let's just make it like this so it's obvious. And then I also got 200 people organically. I really promoted the heck out of it, and I got 200 people organically. Okay? So I have 400 people total. And let's say that I have a 2% conversion, which is pretty standard. Usually it's going to be higher for a $1,000 offer. Yeah, I know you can't see the full whiteboard. That's fine. We're streaming it elsewhere. 2%. So that's 8. So if I'm charging $1,000, that's $8,000. Okay? So you paid $1,000 and you made $8,000. It's pretty good. That's a pretty good return. Yeah? Pretty good return. All right. Solid. So if I know that I converted at 2%, now I'm like, okay, I can spend a little bit more. Now there might be some circumstances where I'll be like, 400 people is really not a lot because it's not that much, especially when these people don't really know you. I like to, in an ideal world, you would have more people. Ideally, you would have 500 people during a launch, but sometimes it's okay to have less. Just the more people you have, the more energy there is. Usually the conversion is higher when it's a bigger audience. So let's say I do a different test. This is also a different test. It's just B, okay? This is another potential test. And this time I'm going to use a $2,000 budget because I got 2 sales during my secret enrollment. I have $2,000 I can spend and I can put that money into ads. I have $2,000. So within that $2,000, I got 400 people from ads at $5 cost per lead. I still got 200 people from organic. Great. I ended up with 600 people. And at 2% conversion, that's 12 people. So I got $12,000. Pretty good. Pretty nice, right? And this is the same. This is pretty easy to do once you've. It's a lot of work to do on the front end, and then it's easy. So I did this. I'm like, cool, profitable, nice, very effective. Let's kick it up a notch. And from there, I get to see the numbers, and I'm like, okay, so let's do it again. And let's do it again, and let's do it again until I hit 6 figures, right? The only thing that will differ is how much money I'm putting into ads or how much I'm promoting it. But the first time, like I said, I do ads and organic. The second time, the third time, and the fourth time, I do ads only. I only promote it again to my entire audience on the 4th or the 5th time. Writing on my hand. So the second time, up to maybe the 4th time, ads only. And I did it every month. It was easy. Loved it. You don't have to do it every month. You don't have to. But it's so easy that you're going to be kind of like, why wouldn't I do it more often when it's already done for me? All you have to do is change the dates and you just have to hang out in the Facebook group. It's so easy, right? So with this said, let's talk about a few other things that might happen. My client, when she did her launch, her scalable launch, and I've only been teaching this process, especially with the tech and the setup and the strategy. I've only been teaching this to my private clients. My private coaching, my private mentorship is starts at $10,000. So I've only been teaching it to very, very few private clients so far. Up until I started enrolling into Scalable Launch Accelerator, which you guys can potentially join if you want to. So the other thing that could happen is how else can we maximize the spend? Well, the other way that you can maximize the spend is you can increase your conversion. So work on increasing the conversion from say 2% to 5%. So maybe you tweak some stuff, maybe not, at which point you might have to change up and tweak a few things. But in many cases, 5% is still pretty good, especially when your offer is really refined. You've done a lot of source code gathering. I call it market research. You really are tapped in to what people want. And usually, because I've done so many launches, I can usually tell whether something's going to work or not. A lot of times I can just tell if something needs tweaking, if something is going to work. And that I'm usually pretty on it, just from how many times I've done this so far. But let's say that it's 5%, right? You've made some tweaks, 5%, you've added some extra things. Maybe you changed up the bonuses, whatever. So let's say that you did the same thing, and let's say that you had 600 people. Like I said, you spent $2,000 on ads. You got 600 people. So you got 600 people total. This is just previous launch. This is not the same thing yet. But you got 5% conversion. Now at this point, it's 30 people, 30 sales, which ends up being $30,000. Now how killer is that? How killer is that if you do it with organic and ads? But if you just do ads, right? If you only do ads, let's do another example actually. Let's do an ads only example, and let's say that you're going to be between 2 and 5%. Let's say your conversion is going to be at 3%, okay, which is pretty average as well. 2%, 3% conversion. So let's say that you're going to spend $5,000 on ads. You're not going to promote it to your audience. Ads only. Okay, $5,000 budget. make sure you guys can see this. $5,000 budget. Cool. So at so that is going to get me 1,000 leads. Yeah, 1,000 leads. $5 a lead, 1,000 leads. You guys are following, right? Are you guys asleep? Are you guys here? Say hello. Say yes. It's flipped anyway. So if you're on Instagram, it's flipped. So you're going to just have to listen to what I say. We're also live on my Facebook where you can see the full screen. Okay, cool. So you get 1,000 leads, right? $5,000. It's pretty sizable, but at this point, you've made a decent amount of money and you're like, all right, let's do this. $5,000, you get 1,000 leads. Let's say that your conversion is 3%. So you actually end up making $30,000. So you spent $5,000 and you made $30,000. Who would like this conversion? Spend $5,000 and make 30. Who would be like, yes, I would take that. Say yes if you would take that. Now, none of this is a guarantee, to be clear, right? There's so many details with this that will really depend on your business, and this is why working with somebody intimately to support you in making it work is so important. So if this is resonating, definitely make sure that you stick around where we talk. I'm going to tell you more about the Scalable Launch Accelerator so you can have my eyes on your launch. So now let's say that you are able to get a 5% conversion. Same example, 1,000 leads at 5% conversion. How much is that? That is $50,000. Now, how awesome is that? So let's say that that's the result. Let's say you're able to consistently get, and I'm not saying you will, but let's say that you're able to consistently get 5% conversion on your launches. You get a 5% conversion on your launches. You spend $5,000 on your ads. And from that, you get $50,000 in sales. How many times do you have to do this to have a six-figure launch or program, have a six-figure program? How many times? Very easy math, you guys. This is not a trick question. Twice. Now, what if you want to make $200,000? How many times do you have to do it then? Not a trick question again. 4 times. Now, I'm really simplifying this. Again, very simplifying. You have to be willing to spend this. You have to be willing to tweak things. I don't know if you're going to get 5% conversion. I don't know. Nothing I say is a guarantee. Past results are not a guarantee of future results. Okay, so we're all on the same page. But this is what's possible, and my clients have done this. I have done this. Okay, so my goal is to show you what you're able to create. Now, the most amazing thing with this is that you don't have to go live. You don't have to do all these crazy things that you normally would have to do with a launch, right? You don't have to. So that's really the most amazing thing about this whole process, because if all you have to do, if everything is done for you, right? Not done for you, but you've done it all, right? There's always a setup period. There's a setup period you have to do. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yes, you're going to have to work, right? Everything that's worth it takes work. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to work to set it up. You're going to have to set all the pieces up together, and they're all going to have to be hooked up. They're all going to have to work, okay? Once it's done though, once you've done the work to set it up, if it converts the first try at a 2% or more, you can do it again with ads. And then you just keep doing it again. And it's super easy afterwards. That's the goal, is to make it repeatable. And when you run ads, you don't have to promote it. You don't have to sing and dance. You don't have to do anything crazy to get people in to those launches, because your message is going to do that, right? So that's really the beautiful thing about this. That's what I've been doing for my Serve to Sell program. I sell it through Evergreen now, but I did that in the very beginning with my Serve to Sell program. I did in the beginning with my Align Marketing Academy program. And it's been really incredible. And I'm really excited to test it out with other programs soon. And my client has done this. My other clients have done it, and it works so incredibly well. And I honestly have really hesitated sharing this, because I kind of don't want people to, I don't want everybody to do this, but at the same time, I know how much of a relief it was for me. Honestly, the first time that I did it, I breathed such a huge sigh of relief that I was finally able to just like relax. It was like, finally, finally, I can finally do it in a way that like makes sense. I don't have to kill myself in the process. Like, my God. I wish more people were as honest as you, girl. Thank you, Julia. That's what I do. Laura, Kamila is the real deal. Thank you. You're so sweet. Is this launch for courses only or services as well? That's a great question. I would say it works for anything because it's the launch process works for anyone. Gosh, this it's getting really bright in here, so I have to keep adjusting the camera settings. The launch process works for anything. I do find that if you don't want to do calls, it is recommended that you do it for a scalable offer, like a launch, for like a course, a group program, or a membership. But you can do it for one-on-one. You can do it for services. You'll just have to make it a little bit more unscalable in the sense of doing calls. The most predictable that I've found personally, this process, the most predictable has been for doing courses, group programs, and memberships, not one-on-one. That's been the most predictable. Okay. Now, the intricacies, there's a lot of detail. So the questions that always come up at this point: what is the sequence? How do I structure these launches? How do I run the ads? How do I make sure my ads are going to work? How do I make sure my offer is actually going to be set up properly? How do I maximize my return on investment? Right? There's actually things that you can do. We kind of made it a very simple process, but there are actually ways that you can structure your launch and your offers to increase your ROI on the ads as well. There are also ways for you to move people through the process and move them into other programs and things like that as well. Julie says, I invested in a huge program that was about scaling actually by recommendation of someone we know. And when I look back, you have been in business 3 times as long as that company. People need to know who they're learning from, people who know how to scale and aren't teaching theory. I know you know your stuff. Oh, Julia, you're so sweet. Thank you. That is so awesome. Oh, so nice to see you. So there's obviously a lot of questions here. So hopefully this training has been helpful for you so far. If it has, please go ahead and say yes, like helpful. Tell me that this has been like eye-opening for you. I just want to hear it. So my passion, it's really cool because I feel like I've fully healed from burnout. I feel like I still have been able to structure and really create structures in my business to support me having more freedom. And I have been able to do more organic things like this. Like I haven't been able to do masterclasses like this really a lot because I was really just focusing on like surviving and sustaining. And that's been the most important thing for me. So I'm really excited to be able to start doing more and share things. And this is why it's actually really exciting that we have this new program that I'm creating, that I've put out actually, because I haven't done programs like this in a very long time, right? Cindy's like, I'm not a numbers gal, however, I can feel from your passion how helpful this is. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome for you because I know you're in the accelerator, so I know this is gonna be awesome for you too. Oh, good, Julia. Okay, so for those of you guys who are like, this was great, I'm done, thank you. Or if you're already in the accelerator, wonderful. This is the time where we can close out and I will see you on the flip side. If you're interested in learning more about what having my support in this process could look like, I wanted to share with you a little bit more about the Scalable Launch Accelerator, where I tell you all the things that you need to know on how to implement this in your business. Now, I haven't done a lot of implementation programs. I've done a few, and usually the implementation part and the deep coaching part I do in my higher ticket programs, like $10,000 plus programs. And this is the first time that I'm going to be running this program. So this is why anytime I run a program for the first time, I always create an easy way to get started, right? I always create the most no-brainer way to get started. And typically the rates often go up, and potentially the changes, there's some changes in structure and things like that to make it even easier for me. So the Scalable Launch Accelerator, you are all here. I actually want to tell you a little bit more about what that is. And it is an implementation and coaching experience. It is an 8-week program where I will walk you through all the steps to making this actually happen and work in your own business. So you can work through and set everything up, as well as implement and actually run that launch. So you can just be everything you need to have in place. All you have to do is hit go, and then you go live, right? That's all you have to do. That's really my goal. So you're so sweet, Julia. Julia distracted me with your compliments. Y'all, whatever she's offering, if you're in the market for a program and need help and don't know who to trust her. She's been launching for a long time. I met her at an event in 2016, and she's still doing and teaching launching. She knows launching. Oh, you're so sweet. Okay, you need to stop looking at the comments. So I'm like blushing. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the Scalable Launch Accelerator. So everything I talked about is basically what we're going to have you create. So it's creating that rinse and repeat launch process that allows you to create an asset, really, and something that I've been really passionate about in my personal life. I don't talk about this too much, but I'm really passionate about creating a legacy, not in a cheesy type of way, like rah kind of way, but like an actual legacy where I can have things that work for me without me having to work it. Now, in business, it's a little harder to do. Like, yes, you can have a very successful multi-million dollar business, but there's still work that needs to be done. And this is why I think having assets in your business is so important, so that the working doesn't have to be as hard, so you can have more time to do things that matter. So for me, I really have a vision of investing in real estate, and like I'm really into investing in general and like the stock market and stuff like that. And that's something I'm really excited about. And within the business, I've been starting to see it in a similar way. So how can I create business assets that can serve me not just once, but many times, multiple months of work, or maybe a year of support, where I don't have to do as much in the process, and it just feels easier. So that's been the kind of the vibe that I've been going after, like creating those assets, being like more of that CEO versus just a coach vibe. So if that's the vibe you have and that's what you want to step into, this might be a very good fit for you. But I'm gonna go ahead and actually share my screen so you can see. Hold on one second. There we go. There we go. Much better. All right. So this is really, I'm such a perfectionist. I'm actually not really a perfectionist, but I want to. This is not correct. This is what happens when you try to, okay, if you're on Instagram, you will not be able to see what I'm sharing because that's just on Zoom. But anyway, I'm just going to talk through it and not worry about having my face on here, even though I really want to have a face. Here we go. I did it. It's happening. Yes, if you're on Zoom, thank you for making through that. Okay. Yes, I did it. Okay. All right, so the Scalable Launch Accelerator is the first ever done with you implementation experience to plan and set up your own rinse and repeat launch event. And this is really the secret